recently did a video showing you guys the history of the Clipper Ship Cutty Sark, and I was really surprised to learn a lot about that ship, and I was even more surprised about the Scotch whiskey with the same name. I had seen it throughout the years and I never really paid attention to it. I didn't realize the connection. Well, this is an indirect connection to the ship itself, and actually the Scotch can thank the ship for a lot of its success. And I, like I said, I did the history of the Cutty Sark, and I'll put that in the description below. I also did the video on the AIRFIX Cutty Sark model kit, which is going to be really fun, and I'll put the link to that in the below. And I'll also make a playlist of just Cutty Sark things. And what I want to do is I want to actually tell you guys the history of the Scotch. I was reading it on their website, and I was like, you know, this is pretty fascinating. So if you're a history buff like I am, you'll find it interesting. So I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll talk to you soon.
When forming a company in any field of business, it is important to calculate the amount of demand the product will generate. For instance, it wouldn't have made much sense for a shipyard to open and build ships in the middle of Kansas. When it comes to alcohol, as the history of the world would tell us, there always seemed to be a demand for it. In the case of Cutty Sark Scotch, as it would turn out, there would be a huge demand for it in the United States. In today's society, alcohol is everywhere, from commercial advertisements on TV to billboards and newspapers, even in magazines and online advertisements. And it is hard to believe at one time alcohol was illegal in this country to own and consume. This was called prohibition, and the law forbade anyone from possessing or consuming alcohol. This actually seemed to help organized crime syndicates. When it comes to mind are the speakeasies that were in Chicago serving underground alcohol with a side of gambling and prostitution. But that is another subject for another video. The point is that millions of people in the United States wanted a source to get their alcohol. Prohibition would start in 1920 and continue for nearly 14 years. And for some Americans, that's a pretty long time to go without having a drink. So adding another piece to the puzzle, the Clipper Ship Cutty Sark. I've done a history video on this beautiful ship, and I'll put the link in the description if you would like to learn more about her. She was built as a clipper ship in 1869. The Cutty Sark was built in Dumbarton, Scotland. She got her name from the poem called Tam O'Shanter, written by Robert Burns. The poem is about Tam, who is a farmer, and he encounters a coven of witches. One of these witches is very beautiful, and she's wearing an outfit that is very revealing. The short dress or short skirt is referred to as a Cutty Sark by the Scottish. Overwhelmed by her beauty, Tam cries out, "We all done, Cutty Sark." At this point, the witches see him and start to chase him. He gets on his horse and flees, but in doing so, the beautiful witch wearing the Cutty Sark actually grabbed onto the horse's tail. And that is why the figurehead on the Cutty Sark's bow features a beautiful nanny who is holding a horse's tail. The Cutty Sark was launched in 1870. She was built for the tea route, which would run from Shanghai to London. She would actually have 32,000 square feet of sails. The Clipper ship would introduce speed to the cargo shipping trade. The Clipper ships could actually travel up to 4 times faster than regular cargo ships, and she would reach speeds of up to 17 knots. The Cutty Sark would also break speed records while engaged in the wool trade, which would run from Australia to London. The ship today stands restored to her full glory in Greenwich, England. The idea for the blended Scotch whiskey was introduced on March 23, 1923. The location, 3 St. James Street in London. The wine-producing company of Berry Brothers and Rudd were looking to produce a lighter-style blend of whiskey. Having been the official supplier of wines to the royal family, they understood what it took to be successful. They would design a label that would become an icon. The original design of the label was created by James McBay. McBay was Scottish and at the time was a very popular artist. The blended Scotch whiskey's name would be inspired by the legendary clipper ship, the Cutty Sark. McBay would provide his rendition of the beautiful ship that would eventually grace each bottle in the following years, decades, and actually a century. Originally, the label was supposed to be a cream or white color. An error in the printing would produce the bright yellow label we know today. Aesthetically appealing, it was decided to keep the color scheme, which would continue. Looking to increase their business on a global scale, Berry Brothers and Rudd decided to start by selling in the United States. But at the time, the U.S. was under the ban of prohibition. This meant that it was illegal for any individual, company, or enterprise to purchase alcohol from any other country. Not only were they prohibited from importing the alcohol, that they could not produce it either. So the problem was simple. How do they get their new blended whiskey to the many potential customers in the U.S. when its government did not allow it? Enter Captain Bill McCoy. McCoy would form a relationship with the smugglers who would bring illegal alcohol into the United States. His route would become known as Rum Row. This area would be located south of the Florida Keys. Captain McCoy would not risk smuggling anything but the best quality of alcohol products. This would eventually lead to the phrase, the real McCoy. Cutty Sark blended Scotch whiskey would also be known as the real McCoy to customers who could trace the shipment back to McCoy himself. Eventually, customer demand would steadily grow for Berry Brothers and Rudd's product. Eventually, prohibition would end in the United States, which would cause a spike in sales. By 1934, over 7,000 cases had been sold. This number would swell to almost 81,000 cases by 1936. Later in 1956, illustrations of the beautiful clipper ship, Cutty Sark, would actually be used in promotional advertisements. And this would continue to increase its popularity and customer base worldwide. In fact, by 1961, it would be the leading brand of Scotch whiskey sold in the United States. It would even be secretly brought aboard the Mercury 9 mission and enjoyed by its astronauts. Cutty Sark Scotch whiskey would also be seen from time to time on the movie screen. This would include Raging Bull, which was released in 1980, Goodfellas, which was released in 1990, The Sopranos, seen in 1999, as well as Mad Men, which was released in 2007, just to say a few. In 2018, Cutty Sark would be bought by the Glen Turner Company, and with its popularity and ever-growing customer base, it continues to be produced in Scotland to this day, nearly 1 century after being created.